I'm an American board certified OBGYN, a mom, a Muslim, and I'm talking about sex. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast. Welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sadaf, and this episode is everything you need to know about Ramadan and keeping the intimacy alive. Before I get into it, I want to make sure that everyone knows that this is not any type of medical advice. If you have any questions about your health, make sure you go speak with your healthcare provider. And of course, this is not any advice on religion. So if you have any questions about your religion, make sure you go speak with your friendly neighborhood religious leader. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast because I just happen to be a Muslim woman that talks about sex. So today I am so happy to have on with me again, Dr. Uzma Jafri. And Dr. Jafri, I will let you introduce yourself.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me back on the podcast, Sadaf. It's always amazing to come back and talk about sex because, it's not done enough, I think. I'm a mom of 4 kids, and I have a graduating senior this year, so it feels like I'm somewhere in a twilight zone with the world and with my home life right now. It's like, how am I here? Because I'm really just 12 years old, trying to fake it till I make it. I am a physician, a family physician, and I'm geriatric and obesity med certified for the past, I would say, 10 years, 15 years. Gosh, how old are my kids now? 15. I've been practicing primarily geriatric medicine and just got into obesity medicine a couple of years ago, run my own private practices, and I'm the host of Mommy One Muslim podcast.
Amazing. That's right. You are super busy. Run your own practices. You have multiple practices?
2. So I have one that's for 65 and over. That's my geriatric practice. And I couldn't do obesity and private pay with anybody under 65 because I'm opted into Medicare. So there was a little bit of, legalese into why I had to have 2 separate practices.
Okay, awesome. So I'm super excited because I think this is a topic that doesn't get discussed enough, don't you think? I mean, intimacy in Ramadan, I feel like, people are kind of afraid to talk about those kind of things. But we are not, Uzma, you and I.
No, we're not. I feel like we're the Mavericks. But it's interesting that you say people don't talk about it enough because there's so much energy and so much curiosity invested in Ramadan and your periods, because it's kind of like, and I think we'll talk about this later, where women are trying to delay their periods or hasten their periods or figure out what they're supposed to do. But it's the sex part where I'm like, I know people are doing it wrong. So I'm like, you're making big time mistakes. And it's like every Ramadan, I hear it or I see it. And, people will quietly come and they'll ask because they're too embarrassed to go to, you said your friendly neighborhood spiritual leader. And I'm like, is that an oxymoron? Because can women go to their quote unquote friendly?
And they're not, they have no idea. Listen, first of all,
so
if they go to their friendly neighborhood religious leader, they're not going to get any type of information.
No.
I don't know of any friendly neighborhood religious leader that is an OBGYN.
Oh, there's that too. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I concur.
Or even somebody that can talk about it, right? About periods and fasting and how to even, whatever. So, but you and I, we're going to tackle it. So we're good.
Yeah, ready.
We're good. So tell me what you think. Now, do you think that libido drops during Ramadan, especially for mothers?
I think libido is about the same. That could be relative. I'm only going to speak for myself. I don't notice a change personally. A lot of people I know don't notice a change personally, but it's the ability to find time. How do you schedule this in between all of these extended hours of worship and work that you're now doing in Ramadan? So I don't know that it changes. Even in the obesity courses, we talk a lot about hunger and satiation and how does that work with intermittent fasting. And, even though our fasts are pretty short this year, how does that work on your hunger levels and your hunger hormones and stuff? But I don't think we have enough data to say that those are somehow related to your, sex hormones. So I'm not sure. You probably know more about this than I do.
Yeah, so actually there is some research being done by a colleague of mine, and she's working on research on how GLP-1s affect our libido, right? Because they help you, right? They get rid of that food noise right? So that you're not always thinking about food, but they're also, are they, now you can correct me, do they decrease your dopamine? Do they, the way that it responds? I mean, what are they doing at the level of the
They shouldn't.
neurotransmitter?
They're actually working on, well, two right now. And then I think by next year, we'll have the GLP-1 that also works on three. I forget when that's going to be released. But they're working just on your hunger hormones. So they're not going near your dopaminergic centers. I would say if your dopamine is getting activated, it's that hit of checking your weight, however, whatever your cadence is of checking your weight, and that dopamine hit of, oh my gosh, this is actually working. And
Yeah.
that kind of euphoria, I think, is, counters any negative effects that the GLP-1s are going to have on your mood or libido.
Yeah. There is some thought though that it does affect libido, like it decreases libido. So I
Mm.
don't know. I think the jury's out on that, but from what I understand, there is some talk about that, and they're trying to figure out, does it really affect libido or not?
Hmm.
So I think that, in terms of for libido, I think you're right. I think that, a lot of people, maybe their libido doesn't go down, but I think what happens is that there's not enough time,
Where
right?
do you
Like,
put it?
right, right,
Yeah.
because you're fasting, and then if you're fasting, then you break your fast, well, then you can have intercourse after you break your fast, but then you're going for, like, those nightly prayers, if you're going for those nightly prayers, or you're just exhausted from fasting, right? Or from the day or from working or whatever, and then you do it all over again. Then you go to bed, and then you wake up early so you can eat, and, I think right, I think that is, like, the bigger issue for a lot of people, but right, like if we're going to talk about like midlife women, we're going to talk about menopause and perimenopause.
Yeah.
And we know that, our ovaries produce estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And we know that testosterone starts to go down during this perimenopausal period. And then after menopause, it really goes down. We know that we do get a little bit of testosterone from the adrenal glands, but a lot of women during midlife, and that actually ends up being one of the most distressing symptoms that women have, which is decreased libido. So I think that if we're talking, depending on what age group we're talking about, right? But if we're
Yeah.
talking about women that are in midlife, then their libido could be going down because, maybe they're tired, but also because their ovaries aren't producing the testosterone. But also, they may not be sleeping because if they're having hot flashes and night sweats, so then they're still exhausted. Then they're fasting and they're exhausted on top of exhaustion.
Yeah.
So
You
there's
have
a
the
lot.
insomnia, all the things. And I mean, to your point, when you're talking, if we're going to talk about age groups or phase groups, moms who are pregnant or nursing or have littles, usually it's like the nursing moms or any moms with any history of postpartum depression or even just the baby blues. You're getting into like big libido questions. And I feel like that breastfeeding thing really tamps down on the libido. And I'm sure you could talk more about that as well. So again, it's a phase and stage of women, and absolutely menopause. I'm waiting. I don't know that the libido has changed yet, but we'll see.
Yeah. And, I think that when you talk about moms and you talk about those with little ones, you are absolutely right, right? Like with the breastfeeding stage. So we
Mhm.
know that, so there's a term that came out recently, I would say probably they coined it last year, and it was with, they did some research. It was with Jill Craft, Dr. Jill Craft, and Dr. Rachel Rubin, and a few other medical students. And they coined a term called the genitourinary syndrome of lactation. And it was also published in ACOG in the Green Journal.
Very
And they
cool.
basically talk about, you know, that breastfeeding is an estrogen deprivation state, right? The estrogen has to be low for that milk to come out into the breasts. And so when you have that, you have symptoms similar to that of like when you're menopausal. So, for example, a lot of women, when they are breastfeeding, will have pain with sex, right? Because they'll have that decreased
Dryness.
lubrication, dryness. And especially if they had, let's say they had a vaginal tear or something like that as well, right? So that healing, that process, all of that can really make sex uncomfortable, penetrative sex really uncomfortable. And so I think that, we really have to take that into account, and that will absolutely, right? Like if you have pain with sex, you're going to not want it. And that can absolutely affect your libido. And then on top of that, exhaustion and, all the other things that you're dealing with.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we talked about this a little bit is how do you think like sleep fragmentation physiologically impacts desire?
Oh, well, I know, like, just this week, I was so dizzy, like literally dizzy with sleep deprivation, where I felt like it was like this vertigo where I was being pulled to
Oh,
one
no.
side as I was walking.
Yeah.
And even when I lay down, I felt the same thing.
Yeah.
And, it's like a situation came up where it was like, I cannot even think about that right now. Like, I really have to make up on this sleep debt. And that's my priority right now. I have to make it a priority because everybody in this house is depending on me for nourishment. Like, I can't engage right now. And that, I think, certainly plays an issue more so in Ramadan because we're spending less time asleep and our sleep wake cycles are all messed up because I have to stay up until this time, then get up at this time. And it's not the natural routine of our lives. It's not the regular routine. It's a one-off that surprisingly, like, we look forward to every year and we love doing it. And somehow I'm just absolutely sure that Allah makes us able. Like, I was operating on 2.5 hours of sleep last night.
Oh my goodness.
Got through my morning somehow and then came home and like had to nap. I was like, I have to schedule this. This doesn't happen during the rest of the year. I would never function on 2.5 hours of sleep. I wouldn't get anything done. But this change in routine that lasts for like a good 30 days, which is a habit building time, interestingly enough, we're we're asked to do so many things, so many of our regular routine things, and so many extra additional things that we put on ourselves in order to meet whatever goals we have for the month. But in order to engage in sexual activity, it's just sleep deprivation, I feel like is more important than even the caloric deficits that we go into, because I think it's the sleep that really shows up right away, like pretty fast in our day. And it's really hard to get around that unless you're being very proactive about scheduling and about discussing with your partner, like, hey, this is what we got. This is what we want to do this month. Or if this is what you want to do this month, this is the window. That's all you get. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think it's, the sleep deprivation is really, really rough. And I know
yeah.
that this past week I was really struggling at like
Mm-hmm.
work and trying to stay awake and, doing what I needed to do because you're just so tired from
Mm-hmm.
having to get up early and then just not scheduling enough sleep. So I think that is huge. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's sleep comes before sex. I'm
And
sorry.
food. At our age, it's like food. Like, sleep
Yeah.
comes before food. But
Yeah.
also think about it. Ramadan is on a lunar calendar, right? So we're going back 10 days every year. So our days are getting shorter.
Yeah.
So the hours, the days and the nights, right? Well, I guess the nights would get longer technically, but
Yeah.
so I guess the window will expand, but like having less daylight hours also affects your energy, affects your sleep. And that's also, I think, a factor in what's throwing us off this year.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So what do you say to women? Let's say, somebody comes to you, a patient or whoever, like a friend or somebody, and says they feel guilty for not showing up sexually for their partners. What would you say to that?
Um, wow, that has like literally never happened. No, I've had patients. I have never had friends. Never, not once.
I was going to say that is true. That has
Yeah.
never happened
Like
in
thinking
the
about that.
history.
I'm like, alhamdulillah, all my friends have the opposite problem. Okay.
It's true.
So patients, I have had patients who feel a lot of guilt and remorse about not being able to be available sexually for their partners. And it's a matter of going through the medical workup. Like, is there a medical reason for why this may happen? As easy as, okay, we need to do some hormonal replacement, or, we need to address depression, pseudo depression, any of those things. Like, let's do a full metabolic workup and rule out any physical reason for this to be the case. And then move on to, hey, are there any mental hangups? Obviously, in the initial workup, we're also looking for safety. Are you safe in this relationship? Is there, some kind of mental block or emotional block that you have because you're not feeling secure in the relationship that you have right now? Exploring those things, exploring substance abuse, exploring sleep is a big thing for me too, and nutrition as well, to make sure you're getting all of your needs met. And if then there's something that we need to do, okay, let's talk about hormonal replacement. Let's talk about, I did have a patient that I had to prescribe dilators to because she had such severe vaginismus after menopause that she just went 10 years without and just was beating herself up over it, even though her husband was like, I'm okay. Like, I'm satisfied that she's with me. I can hold hands for the rest of my life and I'll be so happy. And I was like, you are literally one in a generation man. So he was
I've
great.
never heard
You've never heard that. He's the only one. So I have an N of one on that one.
that.
Like, providing her with dilators in order to exercise her way and get there, therapize her way to some kind of sexual activity that was good for both of them. But it was, it took several visits to have him come in and be like, we need to involve him in this
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah.
And, if you're not comfortable talking to him, I'll be the mediator and we can figure this out. And that was the first time she ever heard him in the office say, I would hold your hand for the rest of your life. She
Aw,
started crying. It was beautiful. So
yeah.
I was like, wow, for 10 years, you never had this basic conversation with your partner. And I think that's really important. Again, it was talking to, I've never been able to talk to a friend about it, but talking to a patient and saying like, hey, let's go through this stepwise process and absolutely loop in your partner. And let's address any unsaid, any unheard conversations, because we'd be surprised how many times the person you sleep with every day and the person you wake up with every day, it's so difficult. Like that barrier across the bed sometimes is oceans deep.
Yeah.
And we're not having those conversations with our partners that are literally take minutes. It just requires a level of vulnerability that most of us don't want to engage in.
100%. And, I agree with that. Having a conversation about sex is so difficult for so many people. And I think that sometimes when you bring up that conversation about sex, your partner all of a sudden thinks that what? So there's something wrong. So now you're going to,
Yes.
then all of a sudden they get like defensive and they start to, not that I'm speaking from personal experience, but,
Yeah, right, right.
I mean,
I mean, at some level, all of us are. Yeah.
yeah.
It's okay.
Exactly. But I mean, I think that, that conversation is very difficult. And I think that, if you're raised with sex negativity or if you're raised in an environment where that type of conversation is really not acceptable or allowed or even done, then you don't know how it's modeled and you don't know how to do
Right.
it.
Yeah.
Right. And so then that conversation, and then, I mean, that honestly really can lead to years and years of sexless marriage, right?
Yeah.
Because we're just not talking about the things that are important. And I always say that whatever's happening in the bedroom is also happening outside of the bedroom. So that means that we're not talking about other things that are very important.
Right.
And I think those conversations can be really difficult. So, the best way to start out, right? What would you say? Like when you started that conversation for that couple that you had, how did you help them to kind of broach that topic?
Yeah, I think I was pretty direct because it was a medical situation. And I was like, hey, it's your wife wanted you here because, she's been coming to me repeatedly for these particular complaints. And I've been addressing it this, and this way. And I understand that, you haven't had sex in a long time. And she's very worried, very preoccupied by being left by you as a result of your sexless marriage. And she's very feels a lot of guilt and remorse about not being able to provide you with this very vital component of your relationship. And he was just got up and was like, no, 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 no. Like, I didn't know this. Like, I would
Mm,
never, like, I would hold your hand forever. And she just needed to hear that,
yeah.
And so then it was a whole thing of, okay, let's figure out how we can find some happy medium for you guys. Are you willing to work with her? And he was like, whatever she wants to do. So he like gave the wheel to her and was like, whatever she's wanting to do, I am happy at any level. And so it was just very direct. So I think if it was a partner, and I know I personally have gone to my husband and been like, I'm noticing this and I have a problem with this, this, and this. And I want to try A, B, and C for this, and this. And that was regarding our personal sex life. And, I think initially it used to be really hard. I mean, I went over a year not having that conversation and it just got worse and worse. And so it was just better to have the conversation and say, give lists. I'm very a bullet point person. So I have these three problems, but I have these three solutions as well. I'm not just picking at you. I'm saying like I'm playing a role in this and I would love to meet you halfway with these three solutions potentially. Let's find something that works for us mutually.
I love that. I love the fact that you're able to have these conversations, and especially because it puts you in a very vulnerable position, right? Because you're really talking about what your needs are and what your wants are, and you're hoping that they meet you, halfway. And I think that what you said, just being very direct. Sometimes we like beat around the bush and we don't really say what we mean, and I think that leads to more confusion. It's just say what it is that you're trying to say, right? And I think like making a time, right, out of the day. Like maybe it's the end of the day. Maybe it's not the end of the day. Maybe it's you're too tired at the end of the day to have that type of conversation, right? So maybe you need to have it after dinner or something like that. But like at some point where you're both not exhausted and you both have the energy to have that type
Yeah.
of deep, meaningful conversation, I think is really helpful. And you don't have to, I mean, it's not a conversation you have to have every day, but yeah, I think like really carving out the time to have that, because then we know that the number one factor in sexual satisfaction is open communication, right? So we really, really want to make sure that the other partner, that the partner knows what it is that we want so that we can both feel satisfied and happy, right, with our relationship.
Seen and heard. And, I don't want people to mistake direct for like rude or abusive. Like direct just means you're giving a very unadulterated version of your point of view. And that can be done in a very loving, very calm way. I think this conversation is exactly what people meant when they coined the term pillow talk. And so if you can have pillow talk because you're not hitting the pillow and falling asleep right away from exhaustion, but you have a few minutes to be like, hey, let me do a check in. And the check in, again, like you said, doesn't always have to be about our sexual relationship. You're always doing that about the kids, about the finances, about about stuff. Right now it's like, what's in the news? So that's your pillow talk. You can absolutely insert this if you've made it a habit to check in with your spouse in some way, whatever your cadence is, whatever your routine is. And if you can't, then absolutely, I think a great place to have a controlled environment. And, again, if you're comfortable with it, schedule a date with your partner and go out to coffee, something as cheap as coffee. You can go and, sit on the patio at the restaurant and have a little conversation and be like, hey, I love you. Always start with the positive. I love you. I honor you. I respect you. But I'm having this situation or I'm feeling this way. Nobody can argue your feelings. If they do, like we've got a whole nother podcast to record. But this is what I'm feeling and what I'm noticing, and this is what I want. And that if you're doing it outdoors, I mean, somebody really does. If they're somebody that's prone to get very defensive or have outbursts, they're not hopefully not going to do that in public. And it's something you can take home and take up again during pillow talk. I guarantee a male partner is going to bring it up again and be like, okay, so why did you say this? And, where can I improve?
Yeah. Yeah. As long as they don't take it too personally, right? I think
Right,
that's
right. Make it
sometimes that happens.
non-personal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we
Absolutely.
operate from a clinical perspective. So I think it may be a little bit easier for us. Like we see a clinical problem, we address it very clinically and without any judgment. Like, I think that's a skill that we've developed. And if that's something that somebody fears that they haven't, practice with a girlfriend and be like, hey, this is how I want to bring it up. What's a good way to do it? And a lot of our girlfriends are very wise and can direct us in a very nice, calm way on how to have that conversation or broach that subject.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So, what I was wondering is that how can couples redefine intimacy beyond intercourse during Ramadan? What do you think?
I have found it very helpful personally in Ramadan. You can have very non-sexual touch, but touching is important, right? Like we need to be touched, what is it, 8 times a day to survive? And it's up to 24 times a day just to have like those neurocognitive like connections made
I had
every day.
no idea.
Yeah. So that's why with my kids, I try to at least even a hand on the shoulder, a hand on their head, my hand on top of their hand. They don't even have to hold my hand. And when you're in bed with somebody, that's super easy. Like it's very easy to reach out and touch a shoulder or just put a hand on a hip. And There's no agenda. There's nothing further. And making sure that those touches are happening, and even very non-sexual, normal kissing during the day. That doesn't break your fast. It doesn't invalidate your fast. Doing those things, going to prayer together, holding hands to and from the prayer, going out. This is something that my husband and I have made a practice to do. We go out, but we take like a bunch of kids. Like any kid that'll fit on our car is welcome to come with us after Tarawih, and we'll grow across town to like the really fun coffee shops and stuff, and
Oh.
making it a date night, but it's like we're with a bunch of kids. We're not going to do anything, but it's like just that kind of intimacy and that kind of closeness that I don't even know that we've had a discussion about it. We just go along and reach out for each other, making it a practice to reach out for each other. I think that can go a long ways in maintaining that intimacy if your activity is going to decrease in Ramadan. And I would argue that in the last 10 days, it probably should, because you're really busy and you're trying to bank on those last 10 days. So, just making the non-sexual, just loving touches, 8 times a day minimum to survive. We don't have enough research to prove that this prevents dementia, but it's really important to do it not just with our spouses, but also with our kids.
I love that. I had no idea about this 8 times a day, the
Yeah.
human touch. That's really
Yeah.
important. And that's to prevent dementia.
No, it's just to provide the neurons to let them keep
Mm.
communicating. We don't say that neurons grow, but they can put out more dendrites, right? And they can
Mm.
to make those connections. So we're trying to generate that. What we notice is as people age, we touch them less. They're wrinkly,
Mm.
sometimes they smell, and it's like we don't touch seniors as much as we touch children, because children are chubby and they're cute. And even if they're covered with like yogurt and they smell like yogurt, we still want to pick them up and touch them, but we don't do that for seniors. So we notice a lot with seniors, especially when they don't have family around and they don't have their partners anymore. It seems that the senility or the neurocognitive decline happens a lot faster. And so in our house, we try to make it a point to go and touch our seniors. But, in our community, a lot of the times the seniors are very like not touchy feely. Like I know my grandfather was already looked like Frankenstein, and then he would totally stiffen up if you tried to hug him, because he just, his mom died when he was 13. He wasn't used to that. It was really hard to get him into it. Now that I know a little bit more with my own patients, I'm like, we should have just touched him a couple of times or like held his hand when he was walking. That was just something we didn't do. But I'm trying to make it different with my parents and my in-laws. So
That's great information, Uzma. I had no idea. So that's amazing.
everybody go hug your mom 8 times. She'll love it.
You did talk a little bit about the small connections, right? Rituals that couples can have when they only have 10 minutes. And I agree with you. I think like holding hands, taking walks, right?
Yeah.
Kissing each other, non-sexual kisses. You can kiss each other. That's not going to break your fast. And I think that, even just cuddling, right? I mean, we have to know kind of like what the intention is. I mean, people kind of know what the intention is when they do something, right? So
Yeah. Like
as
if
long
cuddling
as
is a danger zone for you and that's a slippery slope, don't do that.
exactly, right? So what
Know your
is
boundaries.
right, and what you're able to handle, what you're not. So it's really just knowing about yourself, right? And what do you think in terms of like, let's say, like husbands, what can they do to better understand postpartum perimenopause or the mental load during Ramadan? What do you think would be helpful?
Oh, wow. I haven't even had that. And I think it's, again, communication and telling somebody what you can hold, because I think they're not stupid. They see, and a good one is going to say, thank you. I appreciate you. I see what you're doing, is going to communicate that to other members of the family. And just that is enough to fill your cup and keep you going. But it's not always enough. Especially when I was feeling the sleep stuff, talking to my husband about, the room is spinning. I can't do this right now, or I need help with this, or, I'm running, like Wednesdays are my long days where I'm out pretty much all day, and just agreeing with him at the start of Ramadan, hey, Wednesdays, we're going to have to eat out. And a lot of times you're probably going to have to order for delivery because I'm just involved in patients and I'm not going to get to it. And having those conversations early and figuring it out, definitely before, I think Ramadan, having that conversation was important where, this is how my body is now changing. This is how my mood is now changing. And this is what you're going to notice and what you're going to have to be attuned to, because we also have a teenage daughter. Just pretty much act the same around us around the same time would be helpful. And again, it's communication. I have 3 sons, communicating that with them. Like, you're going through your hormone shifts. I'm going through my hormone shifts. I had to tell my son today, I have one that I have to drop off at high school. He doesn't have a first period. And just at Suhoor this morning, telling him, like, honey, you're going to have to drive yourself to school today. And he was upset with me. Like, what? Why do I have to drive myself to school? And I was like, honey, I am literally too exhausted to drive you safely. I cannot. So it's like all the men in the family need the education, where my body's changing. I don't have the energy levels that I used to have last year or 5 years ago, definitely not 10 years ago. So I can't function on this much loss of this physical need that I have. Or if I have any additional needs, like also telling my husband, like, this is how my body is changing. And now I'm going to need more of this, less of that kind of thing, having those conversations before Ramadan and making it a habit to do that, I think helped me in Ramadan to lay out, this is how our routine is going to change over here. And this is where I need you to fill in the gaps.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important. It's great that you have that open communication. What's great is that I was talking to my middle son the other day and I was telling him, I asked him to do something for me, and then I was like, oh gosh, I forgot. I didn't. Um, I said, I don't know, this menopause, perimenopause stuff. He's like, well, maybe you just need your estrogen.
Oh, I love that. Oh, way to go.
And I
Dr.
was like,
Sadaf for
"Oh."
the win.
I know. I was like, what 17-year-old says, Mama, maybe you just need your estrogen.
Yeah, we all need that estrogen, man. Like, I forgot my kid at math tutoring the other day.
Oh no.
I'm so sorry, honey. It was like the first week of fasting. So I was like, oh, honey, I totally forgot about you.
Yes,
My
that can
chief called her
happen.
dad. Yeah. And he was
Yes.
like, and he didn't miss a beat. He was just like, it's okay. I know. I got this. I'm used to you. I think I got all the way to the mall with her because she needed something. And I realized I forgot my wallet. And
Oh my
he got there at like break. And the mall is not super close to our house. But after 20 years of marriage and 20 years of conversations, like, he knew, just bring the wallet, hand it off through the window, and drive on home. It's no skin off your back. But
Yeah.
I know not everybody can rely on that kind of support. I'm very, very grateful, alhamdulillah, that I've got it. And really, really grateful that all of my brain fogs, when I had it, like the baby fog and then the breastfeeding fog and now the menopause fog, like, they've been really, really supportive. And it's been training for all the kids too, to know, like, hey, we have hormonal shifts just like you do. And we all have to give each other grace and time and, have sabr through all of it, have some patience for each other.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you're training your boys, right? I think that's key for our boys to know so that whenever, they get married and have partners, that they will be more empathetic and will realize that this is just, these are phases of life, and how to just be prepared for that. Because I think that, our parents' generation, at least mine, what I can say is I definitely didn't talk about any of this. And so, then we have, siblings, whatever, that don't know about these things. And I didn't know about any of it. Even as a gynecologist, I didn't get much in residency or anything, whether it was about sexual health, perimenopause, menopause, any of those things. And so you have to do a lot of work and research and learn yourself. And then, but then that's how we make a difference, right? Is once we learn, then we teach it to our kids, that then it changes then for their generation. So I think that that's super duper important. So, some of the questions that sometimes people have, it's about, arousal and, whether or not that, it's probably not a good idea, right? When you're fasting, to do something that's going to get you aroused, because we're not supposed to be having sex during the daylight hours. And so I think that that's something that's really important, especially for if you don't, some people say that they don't trust themselves, right? Because if once they get aroused, then they have to do something about it. And so it's better just to try to avoid that. And I think that as we're talking about, Ramadan and intimacy, it's kind of important to know what your own limits are, right? What you can and cannot handle. And I think that that's really important.
I
What
mean,
do you
this whole
think?
month is about
Yeah.
discipline.
Yeah.
So it's like, if that is, a tendency that you have, well, this whole month is an exercise in disciplining all of our, human needs, from
Yeah.
thirst and hunger to our sexual needs. Because I think that's what's so beautiful about Ramadan. It's like, no food, no water, no sex. And that's Allah telling us, I know you need sex. There's nothing wrong with sex. Sex is as normal as hunger and thirst. There is absolutely no negativity about it. But just like we control our hunger and our thirst, we control our hunger and our thirst for this sexual touch and sexual intimacy that we've got. And if you don't know what your limits are, I think it's okay. Like none of us start fasting knowing what the limits of our hunger are. When we're 11 years old, it's like, yeah, maybe we're hungry by 12 o'clock. But that's something that we learn as we grow older. Like, oh, I can make it. Like I can do this. And once we reach our, sexual awakening in our teens, it's like, oh, like I'm having these feelings and, going through that angst of, oh my God, am I breaking my fast by having these feelings? Now, who do I ask? And not knowing who to ask until like we were in college. And I am speaking from personal experience, not knowing who to ask until we were in college, until we were adults, and being like, okay, what do I do with these feelings that I'm having? And again, learning that those feelings are a part of that desire. It's totally normal. Our sexual needs, just like our hunger and our thirst, are totally normal. This month is an exercise in controlling those and directing all of that energy into worship, into charity. And again, by the time we're our age, I think we've got a handle on it. I think there's very few people that I've come across that haven't been able to redirect all of that energy. There have been people who have not, and then they come wanting to know, well, how do I fix this? Like, oh my gosh, like, how do I not get in trouble for this? But that's literally, I could count them on one or two fingers, how many times that's happened. Most of
Yeah.
us by our age, like know what we're doing and know what this month is for. And as a result, I think we find ease in it and alleviation in it because we can control anything that comes our way, and redirect it, deflect it, however it is that you want to call it, to get through this month. And then hopefully for the next few months, our spiritual cup is so filled, we practice that discipline in every walk of life and everything that we meet professionally and personally.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost feel like this month almost makes us like angels, right? Like angels they don't sleep. I mean, we
Mhm.
sleep, but I mean, like, in terms of they don't eat, they don't drink, there's no sexual desire. And I feel like it's that whole spiritual purification, right? That we're aiming for, that we're trying for. I mean, obviously we're not angels, but
Yeah.
I'm just
Well, I
saying
think
that,
we're better than angels, right? Like the creation of man is actually higher than the creation of angels because they don't have a choice in their worship. They have to.
right.
We get a choice. And that we're choosing to do this. And we're choosing not to engage in what all of the pleasures of life in order to show our love and honor and devotion to God. I feel like, yeah, we're like elevated. And
Yeah.
when, I think, is it the transcendentalists who talk about, like
Mm.
that out of body, like you don't need anything human anymore. And you're like on this like separate spiritual plane. You've transcended
Mhm.
human needs. It's like nirvana, I think. Like this is our nirvana.
Yeah.
And that's probably the closest thing to I feel where I'm like spiritually so elevated. It's such a high that I can carry on for like maybe 5 or 6 more months. Um, so yeah, not angels for me, but
Yeah. Yeah.
nirvana.
Yeah.
Watch somebody get really mad, be like, you can't talk about like pagan stuff like on a Muslim podcast. Like we can talk about whatever we want. It's a Muslim sex
Yeah, yeah,
podcast.
right. No, that's pretty awesome. All right, so now we have our Ramadan and intimacy rapid fire that Uzma and I are going to do, and we'll just go back and forth. I think this is going to be lots of fun, and I think that sometimes people have these questions and they just don't know who to ask, and so we'll just try to answer them. And of course, I'm not you know up to date
Scholar.
with right, exact. Thank you. See, that's the brain fog.
Absolutely.
I'm like, what
Get
the
your
heck am I doing?
estrogen.
I know. It's probably not even working. So right. So I am not a scholar by any means. And I don't know, Usma, are you a scholar in Islamic
No,
fiqh?
absolutely
No.
not.
So so take what we say with a grain of salt. And if you really question it, then please feel free to go speak with your religious leader and see what they say. And hopefully you'll get the answer that you want, or not what you want, but hopefully the answer that
That you
is
need.
correct. Right. That's right. That's right. So, okay, that's my myth number one. Kissing your spouse breaks your fast. What do you think?
No, it does not. Um, I think if it's non-sexual kissing, which, come on, let's be honest, there's a type of kissing where you want something, there's just a type of kissing to show affection. If you're just showing affection, that's fine. That's the sunnah to do that. But to get into it, probably not a good idea, especially if I don't know if it happens to women as often, but if you're a man, it could lead to trouble. So I would probably avoid anything further than affectionate kissing.
I
But you can
agree.
kiss.
I think that, of course, kissing your spouse, I don't think is going to break your fast. I don't even know if many partners have the energy to kiss their spouse, but right. I mean, kissing your
And then you
spouse.
have the whole Ramadan breath going on. So there's
Oh, I know.
we're like
Oh, yeah. I
conscious of
know.
that too. So it's like that is exactly why non-sexual kissing is a good idea. Closed
Yes,
mouth kissing, please.
yes, that's right. That's right. So, and I think that if it starts to lead to arousal, or you're worried that it's going to lead to sex or something like that, then obviously you know yourself, and best probably not to do it. But non-sexual kissing is definitely fine. What about this, Uzma? What if you feel aroused during fasting hours? Is your fast ruined?
I don't think we can control our arousal unless we're engaging in activities that we know arouse us. And again, it's a know yourself thing, right? Unintentional arousal can happen. I think it's a matter of, you know, for anybody who engages or has any kind of sexual fantasies, that's something that comes. That is something that you can control. That is voluntary, and you can. The intrusive thoughts can come, and then you can dua your way out of it. You can make some prayers to, like, okay, wait, this is Ramadan. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole right now because it's daylight. Let me wait until after sunset. That's fine, But I'm not going to, continue on this fantasy route or on this thought route, because I might get aroused beyond my control. And again, this month is about discipline, and I can bring myself back.
100%. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that if something is going to lead you to become really aroused, where you can't control yourself and you feel like you're going to need to find some release, right? Whether it's through masturbation or whatever, then best to leave that for after sunset, and not during the day when you're trying to fast and maintain discipline, and do what we're kind of supposed to do during the month of Ramadan, which is self control. What about pre-ejaculate and vaginal discharge? Does that break my fast?
I think any normal physiologic discharge does not break your fast. And I will be the first to admit, early on in adulthood, like, you don't know. Like, is this normal physiologic or is it not? I would say, like, I had difficulty even until after my fourth kid, where I wasn't sure if this was normal physiologic or if it was something more than that. But again, it's a matter of knowing yourself, knowing what your patterns are. And if it's unintentional, I don't think there's any issue. Clean up, go pray, you're good to go. But if any kind of climax has happened, then that, requires a higher conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So what if you wake up in janaba? Is that what it's called, janaba?
Janaba, yeah. Discharge or ejaculation.
Okay.
Ejaculate is janaba.
Okay. What if I wake up in janaba after fajr and my fast doesn't count? Is that true or false?
So when you're asleep, that sleep, even Allah describes as a minor death, right? So it's like you don't have control of what your dreams are or what you've had, what you're dreaming of. If you wake up with janaba, and a lot of times for women, I don't think we know if it's janaba again or if it's normal physiologic, especially if you're waking up with it. For men, I think they know. It's pretty clear. So if that would be considered unintentional, and you take your shower, or I don't even know if the shower is required. This is something you would have to ask your imam if a shower is required. I think it does. In my household, I make it a practice for all my boys. If you wake up in janaba, you take a shower. Even if you don't wake up in janaba, take a shower, because you don't know what your dreams were. You don't know what happened all the time. So we want you to be able to pray fajr. We want you to be able to pray the rest of the day. So make sure you're clean and have your ghusl done. If this is in Ramadan and you went to bed, like say post Fajr, with the intention to fast that day, and then woke up again and you're in a state of janaba, then ask your imam if you need to take the shower. I think you probably have a different information on this based on your research. But I think the fast is not invalidated either way.
Yeah, no, the fast is not invalidated. You just have to perform ghusl before. And ghusl, for those people that don't know that are listening, is a special type of
Ritual
like
shower.
shower. Yeah, ritual shower that you take after basically ejaculation or after sex or yeah, after that. So anyways, the fast is not broken, but you have to perform the ghusl before you pray fajr. Right, before you pray. Okay, sex during Ramadan. We kind of took care of that. Sex during Ramadan is sinful. Nope. What do you think?
Sex during any time is not sinful as long as it's within marriage in
Yeah.
Islam. So yeah, it's never a sin to have sex with your spouse.
Right,
In
right,
fact, you get like good, it's a good deed. It's considered a good deed that you get
right.
reward for. So have more sex, people. Just be careful in Ramadan.
That's right, absolutely. So before, obviously you have to stop having sex before Fajr and after sunset. So actually, isn't there like a story about how one of the Sahabas used to or broke his fast with sex?
Um, I don't know that. I don't know that hadith, but I know in the Quran explicitly Allah Subhanahu wa Taala gives permission. I know that you were breaking your fast because initially I think the Jews, the children of Israel, were told to fast, but they also couldn't have sex at all during the fasting month. But when Islam came, it was like, okay, I know that everybody was breaking their fast then. So I'm ready to let you like have sex at night. Go to your wives at night. So that's a specific Quranic verse which permits during the night hours after sunset in order to engage in sexual intercourse. So I don't know what the specific hadith is.
Yeah. Okay. And women on their period shouldn't engage in any intimacy. That doesn't make sense, right?
No, yeah. That is definitely, there's a hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha where she narrates the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she would engage in, I think even fondling is considered sexual touch, right? So it was like you have to have a sheet between you, and there was touch happening. This is in Sahih Bukhari, at least. So you can look up that hadith of Aisha where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she did engage in intimate contact while she was on her period. But it's penetrative sex is obviously never allowed
Right.
during menstruation.
Correct. Not during the period. So if I miss my fast because of my period, I'm less spiritual, which is, of course, not true. What do you
It's
think?
not true, but come on. Psychologically, a lot of women think that. I know I do. Like I don't feel the high when
Yes,
I
I
can't
find that,
fast.
yeah, 100%. During Ramadan, when I wasn't fasting, I didn't feel like I was part of the community, right? Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
weird, like because everyone is fasting and it's like a big, it's really brings the community together, right? So if you're not fasting, you kind of feel like you're missing out on
Hmm.
something
Yeah.
because you're not fasting.
FOMO.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
really
but I think
do.
it's more psychological. There's absolutely no spiritual basis for that. Like men and women are equal spiritually in Islam, even though we can't engage in the same physical acts of worship. There are absolutely other things that we can make up for to still make our Ramadan fruitful. And so if you feel less spiritual in Ramadan, it's literally just all in your head.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can have, there are lots of women that will attend the nightly prayers and, even though they're not praying or, they'll do the tasbih or they'll do something, right? And now even I feel like you could read the Quran, right? As long as you're not touching it
It's
on.
not now, it's always been that way. It was like you can't touch the Mus'haf, which is the all Arabic Quran. And so that's the one when you're on your period, you can't touch. But if it has any kind of translation in it, like, yeah, you can read that. I know that it's still, sadly, a pervasive belief in America, which really blows my mind. And that just shows they're usually children of immigrants that have been taught culture and not religion. And oh, I can't touch the Quran, or oh, I can't go in the masjid. There's absolutely places in the masjid that you can go and sit there if that's what you need to do in order to feel the spiritual high. And certainly reading Quran, there's so much benefit in that. Don't give that up just because you're on your period, especially if you're somebody who memorizes the Quran or is on your journey memorizing the Quran. You need to revise. If you don't use it, you lose it. So you should be reading it regularly, and holding a translation with your hands is fine. I think when I was growing up, I would see women like wearing gloves, and, the Quran has all these elaborate wraps on it just so they can try to touch it. Or they wouldn't read it at all. And I'm like, you're making a very easy religion very hard on yourself for no reason. There's no reward in that. Keep it easy, keep it simple.
Yeah, but what if they're reading on their iPad and so it's not like but it is the Quran, obviously. It's the Quran,
Yeah.
it's not just on the iPad, but they are not, but they're on their period. What about that? But it doesn't have any translation.
Yeah, that I don't know. I think I would direct that to a scholar.
Yeah.
I think,
Okay.
in my head, my I want to say, oh, that should be fine. It's just your phone, but I don't know. Allahu
I
alam.
know, and I feel like I wanna say that too, because
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking, but yeah, of
Because
course.
again, I'm like a keep it simple, stupid person. And I'm like, I feel like when you get into the nitty gritty like that, you're doing what the people of the book did before Islam came. It's like,
Right, right,
you know,
making it complicated, right?
making it complicated. But I would definitely ask a scholar on that one.
Yeah. So Ramadan means, and you and I already talked about this a little bit, that you should avoid all affection to be extra pious. No, right?
No,
You
not in
need
our
those 8
religion.
touches. You need, like, those 8 touches.
Yeah, not just that. It's like, I mean, what was the first thing Allah created for Adam alayhi salam after he learned words was Eve, It's like we don't have asceticism in our religion. We don't have nuns and priests. We don't have sexless leaders. Like, we don't trust sexless leaders in our religion. I mean, look at what happened in the Catholic Church. Like, it's terrible. It's because you make a natural desire. You make the halal haram. Like,
Yeah.
this is why there's a specific reason in Islam why we don't do that. And so that physical affection is a mercy. It's what makes us human. And if you're not affectionate towards the creation of God, then how are you going to be affectionate towards God?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's great. So if my libido drops during Ramadan, something is wrong with me. What do you think?
No, it's your body. It's just your body,
Yeah.
honey.
Yeah.
You need to sleep more and eat more and definitely get your water in.
Yeah. I think that that's huge. I think that dehydration, right, is like something that we take for granted. And
Yeah.
but in Ramadan, it's like 10x.
Oh my
Like
gosh. So
you're
bad.
so dehydrated
Yeah.
and parched, and it becomes really difficult. So, and sleep deprivation, I think, is number one. I think that I can deal with anything, like I can deal with, even water, but water
Yeah.
stuff, I think. But like I think the sleep deprivation is what really is like the biggest killer. I think that
Absolutely.
that's really tough. So, and last question I have for you. Well, actually, there's one more after this one. But
Oh,
so
okay.
talking about sex in Ramadan is inappropriate, Uzma. We should never have had this conversation.
There is no modesty in religion. I think that is not a direct quote in from a hadith, obviously, because the hadith is in Arabic, but the translation of it is there's no modesty in religion, so there's no topic off limits at any time. Islam and Islamic topics don't stop or become less appropriate during one month than another month. This is our daily life, and these are our daily needs, and so they need to be discussed regardless of what month we're in. That's my take on it.
100%. Obviously everything's done in kind of like a appropriate manner, right? Like we're not going to be, I don't know, talking about random stuff that doesn't make sense, things like that. But I think that, right, I agree with you. I think that no topic is, off limits during the month of Ramadan. I mean, this is life, right? And so
Mhm.
Ramadan is part of life. We are continuing life. Just like, when we're fasting, we're not like taking the month off. We're
Right.
just continuing, we're just fasting along with doing everything else that we do in our normal daily lives. So I think that I agree with you 100%. I don't think that there's any topic that's off limits during the month of Ramadan. I don't think that that really makes sense. And last question for you, Uzma. Uzma, which myth did you grow up believing?
That regards sex and
Uh,
intimacy in Ramadan, or just
yeah,
any myth regarding Ramadan?
both.
Okay. So regarding any myth in Ramadan, regarding women specifically, was women should not pray in the masjid.
Oh, yeah,
And so that was a
so many of our
pervasive
countries, right?
cultural belief because in the South Asian
Yes.
continent and I think the diaspora, that was a new concept in America where men and women both attend the masjid. Like, what? Why would you do that? And there's so much fitna. It's fitna because it threatens men's autonomy over us and it threatens the patriarchy. Because the more women know about their rights under Islam, the more they're going to assert them. And that becomes a problem for our, what did you call it earlier in the other segment? Our friendly, quote unquote, neighborhood.
Neighborhood religious leader.
Yeah. And a lot of times those religious leaders are just like, the masjid board. And they don't want a bunch of feisty, fiery women piping up and saying, no, actually, that's not allowed. Like, we're not going to tolerate this. And so going to the masjid for me in my 20s was a huge thing. And I remember fighting with my father in Ramadan and him threatening me with every single one of your fasts is now invalidated
Oh my goodness.
because I was like, I'm going to Travi and I don't care what you say. And for the first time in my life, while he was talking, I slammed the front door behind me and I just
Oh
walked
my
out.
goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was like a
Yikes.
big thing,
That's
and I think to this day, I don't think my dad's ever prayed at Travi. No, he's done a couple of like the 27th nights and stuff, but now he's old and it's like you wasted your whole youth not going because you wanted to prove a point to the women that they shouldn't be going. And I'm just like, that's not worth it. Sexually, I would say I had learned about if you have any kind of janaba or if you're on your periods, for women, that would be our equivalent of janaba. Like you definitely can't go to the masjid, you can't touch the Quran. And I think that was really important because I spent a lot of years, missing that week of Quran. Not that that's a huge deal because I would make it up with like voluntary prayers instead, the actual ritual prayer. But I wish I hadn't wasted all those years not knowing. But by the time I got into college, I had learned that no, it's actually okay. Like there's no Allah doesn't withhold his word from you just because of something that he made your body do. Like, he's way more merciful than that. So I think those are the two myths regarding sex and just regarding Ramadan and women in general that I got to break.
Yeah. Actually, for me, Ramadan actually was something that was really special, and I'm sure it was very special to you as well. In my family, though, what's interesting is that my dad, and I still remember this, my dad always took us to Tarawih prayers. He
Wonderful.
always, yeah, when we were little, and that's what got me into going to those extra nightly prayers. And then that's something that I try to encourage my children to do as well, to go as often as we can. Maybe not during a blizzard, but but during when we can go, that's really important to try to go and try to gain as much good deeds that you can accumulate during this month of Ramadan. So that's actually like a memory that I have and that I always remember, especially now that my dad has passed. So
Yeah.
something that was really nice. And I think like a myth that I had similar to you is that, during when you're on your period, of course, we know we can't fast, but that you could actually touch the Quran, that it wasn't wrong. And yeah, I think that was something that I grew up with, that I'm learning, right? That we're all learning, that we continue to learn. So I think that's a key thing.
Yeah.
So we know that during Ramadan, when you have your period, you have to make up those fasts. So, and for those people, right, Uzma, we didn't even talk about the few people that don't have to fast, right? Those that are
Yeah.
chronically
Pregnant,
ill.
nursing,
Right.
traveling, chronically ill. Yeah. Older
Exactly.
people who can't,
Yep.
dementia
Yep.
people, they can't, or patients with dementia, they can't anymore. So there is an expiation for all of those people who are excluded from the obligatory fasting. And the kafara for that and a kafara just means, the fard kafara just means the expiation. So what you would do in lieu is feed so many people. Now, there is a difference of opinion on pregnant and nursing people because that's a temporary condition, right? And so a lot of the scholars have agreed that any fast that you miss when you're pregnant or nursing must be made up. For the
Oh my
other
God.
categories of people, they do not have to be made up because obviously, how is a person with dementia going to make it up? How is an older person with a chronic disease going to make it up? They physically can't do it. So they can only feed people. For pregnant or nursing people who want to be really safe, you would feed the people and then you would make up the fasts. Now, because I always knew that I was going to make up the fasts, never fed the people, but I made sure that I calculated how many fasts I was missing and then spent many, many months making those up, typically on Mondays and Thursdays. For people who during the month of Ramadan, um, in daylight hours, knowingly, intentionally, however it happened and whoever it had started in, if there ended up any kind of penetrative sex, climax or no climax, you penetrated, there is a fard kafara. And this is really important. First step is obviously making sincere tawbah for breaking the fast. You do have to make up that fast now, but on top of it, you need to fast for 60 consecutive days after
Oh
the
my
month
God.
of Ramadan is over. So this is you'd have to check with a scholar to find out if this includes the 6 fasts, the voluntary fast. I don't think it's the voluntary fasts that we do
Oh,
after
well.
Ramadan or over. Yeah, I think it would have to be even after that, would be 60 consecutive days, which if you think about it as a woman is really hard to do. So I think again, you would have to go back to a scholar and say like, okay, what am I going to do on my periods? I don't know the answer to that one. Um, in addition to the 60, if you cannot physically do the 60 consecutive days, you must feed 60 people. And scholars agree that it's 2 meals. So it's not just one meal and you're done 60 people. It's like 2 meals. So you have to feed them for a day kind of thing.
That's
So
so
this
good.
is a little bit more complicated. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Again, like absolutely check with the scholar, but then a lot of people don't check with the scholars because as friendly as your neighborhood imam might be, you will be very shy to say, I intentionally did this with my partner, and people don't want to do that. So, but I think fasting for 60 consecutive days is enough for me not to ever fall into that and be like, I did not, I can't do that. Like 30 days is like really awesome and euphoric, but any longer than that is like, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And actually, now that you're talking about it, you're telling me, you're reminding me that for 3 of my pregnancies, I did not fast. And so now I have to make up 90 days.
Yeah, there's a difference of opinion on whether you need to do the fast or if you could just feed the people. I'm
So
of
I
the more
said,
conservative bent, so I'm going to make up the
mm,
fasts because
yeah.
it'll take a few months, and if you just do 2 a week on Mondays and Thursdays, you're double dipping. You get the benefit of the voluntary fast on Monday and Thursday, but you're also making up these obligatory fasts that you missed.
It's still a long time, Uzma.
It's still a long time. Yeah,
But you know what? Yeah, I mean, so, at the time when I was pregnant, I paid, I paid
the
to feed
kafara. Yeah.
people. Right, right. So I did all that, but I never made up 90 fasts. And I'm just thinking that's, yeah.
That's a lot. And so what we used to do is because we're still human and we're still like, oh, I can trick Allah this way. So we'd make up the fasts in the winter months because they were shorter days. And so
Yeah.
those fasts were a lot easier. Well, we don't have that chance anymore because Ramadan is moving into the winter with the shorter days. So you're going to have to do them
Oh,
during like
yeah.
maybe the fall, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So that's
Well,
what we would
I'm
do.
glad. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad we talked about all of these fasts. That if you miss them, or if you intentionally break, or what happens. I mean, I think that that's super important. So thanks so much for sharing all that information. And well, we are done. I think we're done. This is almost the third time that we're
Yeah,
having,
Alan, we're done now. We're really, really done.
but we're done. So we are done. And go speak with your friendly neighborhood religious leader, because I know that they would love this podcast episode coming from the Muslim Sex Podcast. And if you have any questions, make sure that you go ask a scholar, and let us know what you think of the episode. So DM us and let us know. And until next time, this is the Muslim Sex Podcast. So thank you for listening to the podcast, and make sure you leave us a review, share and like the podcast. And if you leave me a review, I'd love to shout you out on social media. So be sure that you share it with all your friends. And thanks for listening.